Yes. So here's what I want to say. Screen time is a privilege. I do not think that screen time is an entitlement. And what I mean by that is what kids are entitled to um, or what? They're entitled to food, clothing, shelter, education, healthcare, love, living in a safe environment. Screens are not one of those things, but somehow kids have gotten it into their heads that they are entitled to screens. So I want to start with um, the idea that screen time is a privilege that kids can earn, not an entitlement. And this is hard to do right now with COVID, particularly when kids are learning from screens, they're playing on screens, they're socializing from screens, and usually from the same screen. So it can seem confusing about what do I do with this screen when, and this is my lifeline. So, one of Lisa says, make them earn it. So, Lisa, you and I are going to be best buds today because that is my philosophy. You have to decide as a parent to create a collaborative plan about when, where, and how screen time will occur. You're going to decide how much screen time, not for school, you want your child or teen to have on a daily basis. Have a conversation with them about how much they think they desire. And somehow you're going to have to meet somewhere in the middle. So a baseline amount is what we're looking for. And I'm going to use the number 3 because it's easy for this example. So your child finishes with school, then there's a mandatory screen break. If your child goes to school and comes home and immediately wants screen time, I want you to think about whether you want him or her to have it then. So first you have to decide what is the baseline amount of screen I want my child to have. So the baseline is their gimme. They get it every day at a particular time, um, and you're not going to argue about it, and it doesn't get taken away unless they misuse um, their screen time in terms of where they're going. They're bullying people online. They're, as I said, going to inappropriate sites. They're posting inappropriate things, and they don't cooperate with, um, screens, no screens at night. They're sneaking screens. They're showing you then that they're not ready for the privileges of screens that you're giving them. So we have this baseline, but let's say for right now, we're going to say you get an hour a day baseline. You get that no matter what. And I'm not going to negotiate with that hour, okay? The other 2 hours, the carrots, are what you negotiate with. And what I'm finding is helpful for families right now is that you break down those other 2 hours into half-hour chunks, and there's a specific task assigned to each of those half-hour chunks. In one family I work with, one of those chunks has to do with whether or not you go to bed at the time you're supposed to without having a meltdown. Another family, basically one of the half-hour chunks is related to when they ease off their initial hour of time. So you can create the links in any way you want. Here's what I want you to think about. Have tos need to precede want tos. What kids have to do each day, their homework, their chores, appropriate types of self-care, getting up for school, going to bed. These things need to be part of the screen picture. Okay, so we're going to decide how much screen time, not for school, you want your child to have every day. You're going to have a conversation with them about how much they want. So let's say your ideal is 2 hours and your child wants 4 hours. You might want to consider meeting at that 3 hour mark just because then they feel like you're listening to them and they have some skin in the game. This bonus time, the want to time, is linked to the completion of responsibilities. And I call this the easy on, easy off method. Kids don't have a problem getting on screens. They have an enormous problem getting off screens. And so we want to help them with that. One of the reasons it's so hard for kids to get off of screens is because what they're getting off to isn't as interesting. Screen time is a high dopamine activity. Boom, 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 boom. You get excitement, you get rewards, you get pleasure, you get stimulation. Maybe you're gaming with your friends, everybody's yelling and screaming, and you're way out having a great time. Oh, you want me to stop that? You want me to stop that calmly? You want me to stop that and just come to dinner? No, I'm going to fight you every tooth and nail because I am having a great time. Dinner is not a great time. So you have to actually prepare for the ease off times. And this is what we're talking about. So we want to link those times, how kids get off their screen, to the bonus time they want to earn. Complete homework to the bonus time they want to earn. Set that bonus screen time, set the use of screen time at moments that serve you. You have meetings from 4 to 5. That's the time that they can have their hourly screen time. Or maybe they want to game with some friends and it's going to happen every day from 5 to 6. Great. What is the plan for getting off? How are you going to notify them? A lot of times, kids who game need more than a 5 minute, it's time to get off. They don't hear the timer. You can use the timer, of course, and you can use a notification that may or may not go across their screen. But sometimes what they need is for you to come in, eye contact, what I call the rule of three. You make eye contact, you state your request or direction, and they repeat it back to you. And you're going to get a kid who's like sort of looking like this, because they don't really want to look at you, but you have to make contact. And then you can set the timer and it can go off. But they need 15 minutes of time because they're engaged in a game, often with other people. It's harder to extricate. So here are some signs that there's too much screen time: headaches, disrupted sleep or insomnia, vision fatigue, loss of interest in other activities. I strongly encourage you to keep screens out of bedrooms at night. This may mean that you need to shut your internet down at night so your child isn't sneaking. You may need a lockbox where everybody puts their devices in the evening. Of course, you don't have to follow that, but if your child is taking your device, you might need to. What are the ways to maintain screen sanity in a screen insane time? Now, not all screens are created equal. We want to balance different kinds of screen usage. So you can make, this is a TV time, this is a gaming time, this is a on your phone time. You also really would benefit, all families, I believe, would benefit from having screen-free times. Maybe 2 dinners a week if that's tough for you. Maybe every dinner, every night. Maybe a Saturday afternoon is a time when you go off as a family without screens. Think about what free screen time would look like for you. And here's the thing, you've got to monitor your own screen use. Kids kids with ADHD are smart kids, and they cannot stand hypocrisy. Yolanda, age 13, says to me, "What I can't stand is when my dad stays on his phone but tells me to get off of mine. It drives me crazy. It's so hypocritical. I get really mad. He's not even paying attention to me." So we have to monitor how we're using our screens. Now, let's move into the discussion part. I'm going to share with you, if I can, hold on, let me see if I can do it, um, a little cheat sheet on how to use the easy on, easy off method. Just some tips, and I'm going to put it in the chat. Here we go. All right. I hope it got sent. Hold on. There you go. All right. So there are so many questions. Um, Where to begin? I'm going to start with you, Harlan. You said, I need to remind, it's going to be very frustrating for me because there are so many comments and they go away fast. Harlan, I need to remind a parent this week that all screens are not the same for her child. Yes, exactly. Computer is schoolwork icky. Okay. And tablet is fun reward play. She's finding it very useful to pick different styles for different screens. Right. I think that's really important right now that kids see that their different screens are used for different things because it's overwhelming for them how much of their lives have now translated to being online. Um, let's see. Jennifer says less social media feels great. Um, Jennifer also says, LOL, I get that, but they don't understand that it's productivity for work. Yes, okay, I understand that, but I think if you're gonna create a screen-free time, then it has to be a time when you're not subject to work, because for kids, it doesn't register. Kids believe that their work and their lives are just as important as your work and your lives. I know that's gonna be a hard pill to swallow. It's hard for me to swallow, but that's how they think, and so when you're on your phone for work, but they're not allowed to be on their phone, it just doesn't fly, and what you're gonna get is a meltdown or is, a rage spiral or is, a lot of pushback because they want what they want. They're comparing themselves to you. Heather says, "My son will bargain with me." Yes, okay, no bargaining. Bargaining does not happen in the time of an incident. Like you can decide, okay, there might be an occasion where there's an exception. And exceptions are great because kids understand the sometimes rule, right? So, maybe your mom, my dad the other day, he fell and he cracked his ribs. And if I were a young parent, I would be on the phone talking to him and my stepmother, and it might mean that I'm not actually, available to cook dinner at the right time, in which case I need more screen time for my kids. So I would say you're going to get an extra half hour. This is the sometimes rule. Enjoy it. It's not the new every day. So we want to make sure that we really explain to kids when there's an exception and put some boundaries around it. Um, let's see. Okay. Most of our parent time, screen time has to do with researching something, reading articles, or doing shopping online. I understand that, Milishia, but it doesn't matter. Then you should have family work time, and when you're at the table and they're doing their homework, you can do all of your researching, shopping online. If it's family-free screen time, then it's family-free screen time. That is the message we want to convey to our kids because what we want to convey to our kids is being with you and communicating directly is just as important, even more important than me looking up something on Amazon. My son has to take melatonin to be able to sleep. He watches TV on his cell phone until he gets tired. If I take his phone, he cannot sleep. What should I do? Well, Els, that's a really good question. What did he do before he had a cell phone? Did he read? Can he listen to a story? Could you use Alexa so he's listening to something but not necessarily watching something? Um, we want to teach kids how to soothe themselves, how to be able to go to sleep effectively on their own. And if he's having trouble separating from his device and putting it down, then that's something you want to consider. If he basically is using his phone appropriately, watching it and going to sleep at the time you want, then it doesn't sound like you have a problem. Um, Audrey, my second grader was issued his own iPad for classwork. Wow. After complete his work on he is allowed to play on the iPad. He's rushing through work at school to play. How can I enforce no more play at school even when the work's complete? Well, that's something that you can actually talk to the teacher about. And essentially that maybe he has to do his work for a particular period of time and he will not get free screen playtime until he's completed that amount of time. And that's great because we can also teach him how to understand time and feel time as well. Um, Chris, would your screen time ideas work on kids with tech addictions? Have you worked with families where this was successful? Yes, and yes. One of the things that I think happens with addictions is that kids actually don't know how to get themselves off their device. So we want to think about helping kids talk to themselves as they're getting off their device. I'm turning off my computer and I'm going to go into the room and I'm going to play cards with my dad. So we want to set the structure and the expectations, and we want to explain how the brain works, that we need to have low dopamine periods for the brain to recover. We can't live in high dopamine all the time. It will burn out. So we want to verbalize the transition off screens, create some screen-free days, and have screen time be earned. If a child is struggling with a tech addiction, then he has to have very circumscribed amounts of screen that that basically occur at a particular time, and that the way of getting off is detailed. Hi, Mary from Australia. Um, Jennifer, the problem for me is my own shutting down to adult ADHD. I hear that. Gina, we've had a bit of success with allowing our 14-year-old to learn Adobe Premiere Pro video in editing instead of video games. Fantastic. That said, if we didn't use parental controls to shut off Minecraft, he would never go to learn something about a piece of software. Right. So we cannot ask our kids to be the frontal lobes, to use executive functioning skills like like self-discipline, impulse control, um, when their frontal lobes are not only still developing, but they're often up to 3 years behind in maturity for their neurotypical peers. Our job as parents is to be those frontal lobes. So we want to come up with some plans and some programs that will really help you. You're welcome, Jesse. Carlos, sure do. I like the no bargaining in the moment rule. Yeah, that's why you have a family meeting. This is where we discuss screen time. It'll be on Sundays at 3 or whatever. Bring your issues and your ideas at that time, and we'll talk about it, and we'll set the timer so it doesn't go on for 3 hours. Um, Kari, I have ADHD and have to read at night to fall asleep, even with melatonin. Kari, I don't have ADHD and I take melatonin and I like to read. It's something about the settling process. When I was a child, I used to read in bed, sometimes with my flashlight. And I want to honor the book that one of my favorite childhood books was called The Phantom Tollbooth. And the author of The Phantom Tollbooth, Norman Juster, died this week. He was a local to Western Massachusetts. So just here's a shout out to him. Thank you so much for enriching my childhood. He also wrote a very fun book called The Dot and the Line. And I used to love to read under my covers. And here I am many, many years later, and I still like to read a few minutes before I go to sleep. It helps me unwind. And that's something we want to talk about with kids. What is it that helps you unwind? Harlan, I have found this to work well. Also, sometimes parents are surprised and thrilled with the work a child creates on their own and better than some professionals. Yes, so you're replying to Gina, but I love this idea. If your kids like screens, what could they do on screens that is creative? Could they do GarageBand? Could they learn how to, edit and make little movies? That's a fun use of screen, but it's also something that's building their brain. It's not just about gaming, which is all about high level action, intensity, and interest and reward. Wendy, we always have limited the amount of screen time our kids have had. However, when they do get video games, our biggest trouble is getting them to stop and their behaviors afterwards. How can we transition from video games to no video games without them getting angry? Well, this is a great question, Wendy. And this is one of the biggest challenges for families. How do I help my kids transition off the video games? It's that easy on, easy off method I was talking about. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to link how a child gets off their screen time to other screen time they desire. Okay? So it's an earned model. You get this hour every day at this time. How you get off of this hour affects what else you're going to earn for the rest of the night. And I'm going to make this really clear. And then I would sit with them and say, what are appropriate behaviors? What are the guidelines we're going to have for how you get off? And um, what are predicted ways that it's going to be hard for you? And what are the consequences when you don't, follow the agreement? What are those consequences? We want to lay all that out in the beginning so the kids know what to expect, and you're just following through on the expectation. I think the other thing is to help kids with language when they're leaving something they really love that they're very much engaged in, talking to themselves through the process. Because kids with ADHD benefit from self talk. In fact, I don't know about you, but when I'm upset and I'm trying to regulate myself, I need self talk. So, what language can we use? What kind of reminder could we use? Um, lay this out, maybe use a post-it and write it down, put it on the top of the screen, and remind your child, check your post-it before you come into the room. Your negotiations seem to be geared toward an older child. My 7-year-old grandson, Doreen, thank you, has little concept of time. He has an iPad at school as well. First grade, he rushes to be able to play. Of course, of course, that's true. But you can still negotiate with a 7-year-old. It's a curtailed negotiation, but it's a very clear thing. We're putting the have to before the want to. You rush through your homework and you don't do a good job and you don't do a thorough job, then you're not going to earn this thing that we have to do. So I would lay out, what do you think are the conditions under which you can earn your screen time? What do you think you need to do? 7-year-olds have some idea of what their responsibilities are around the house. Maybe I need to unpack my lunchbox, or maybe I need to hang my coat up on the hook. And hopefully you have those written down or with pictures so your child can go up and see what has to be done before the screen. You could even do like a little fun flow chart, like this plus this equals the screen. Oh, thank you, Dana. That is so sweet. Um, okay, a tech addiction. So I want to say something about this, Jody. So the World Health Organization has come up with a diagnosis for, a gaming addiction. We don't have that in the United States on our DSM-5. That doesn't mean we won't get it. But I think one of the things that we want to think about when we talk about tech addiction is we want to sort of step back and say, what is a healthy, balanced media diet? And right now, that diet for a lot of kids is whacked because of COVID. They're on screens much more than they ever were, and they have a hard time differentiating between screen time for school and fun screen time, or they know that there's a difference, but it's just kind of all about um, uh, fulfillment, gratification in some ways. So we want to know when we were thinking about what is a tech addiction, it would be a loss of time. A lot of kids have this, a loss, like a lack of self-care. Kids don't go to the bathroom, they don't eat for hours, they don't drink anything. Incredible hostility, aggression when it's time to get off the screen, which I think younger kids will do anyway because they don't have the prefrontal cortex to assist them in managing that transition very well. Shifting from one thing to another is already hard for lots of kids with ADHD. Kate asks, do you think screens affect thinking skills in ADHD adults? I think so. I mean, I feel like we are all, addicted to our screens in a way. It used to be that when someone texted you in the middle of a in-person conversation, it was rude to respond, or someone called you, it was rude to respond. It's not rude to do that anymore. It's completely commonplace. I'm talking to a friend and someone texts me and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I got to deal with that. I mean, what we're saying to the person who we're with is my phone and what's on it is more important than my paying attention to you in real time. And so I do think that screens affect our thinking skills, mostly because we think we can media multitask when we can't. Because what happens is our brains cannot actually shift as quickly from one thing to another as we think we can. In fact, Daniel Goleman talks about that we actually need like a 12 to 15-minute warp transition to go move fully from one thing to another. Who gives themselves 12 minutes to transition from one screen to another? I don't know anybody who does that. Um, I use parental controls to do a warning when there's 5 minutes left and he has to get off at the same time every day so he knows it's coming. Wendy, bravo. I think, oh no, Terry, that's you. That's fantastic. I love that. Routine and consistency really are important here when we're talking about screens and kids with ADHD, because you don't want to get into a negotiation every time. Oh, wait, we got to do this. Oh, wait, we got to do that. No, we want to stick with what the routine is. Um, Elle says, glad to know my son is not alone. He often stays up until 2 in the morning, right? So if your child is up until 2 in the morning and they really need to be in bed by 10 or 10:30, then what they're showing you is they do not have the maturity to manage the screen freedom you are giving them. So that has to be dialed back in some way. And they'll say, oh, I can't go to sleep. I need my phone. What if someone texts me? You can work that out. I have a number of families who saved up or spent the money and got an Alexa so that the Alexa's in the kids' room and the phone is in the parents' room, and they can say, Alexa, tell me a story. But they don't have access to their phone because they can't manage it. Or you can, turn the internet off at your house at night. That's another way to do it. How do you deal with getting off being a major fight? I think I talked about that. And I think there should be that, one of the predictions in the agreement that you make is if we have an argument when it's time to get off, you will not earn one of your bonus periods. If if I tell you you've lost your bonus, that you've lost the opportunity for your bonus period, you've not earned it, and you continue to argue, then that will affect the time you get the next day. You lay it out and you write it down and you put it on your refrigerator so that the agreement can be referred to over and over again. Thanks, Attitude, for sharing this report on ADHD and screens last week. That looks fantastic. I'm gonna check it out myself. Um, let's see, Nancy, I found a picture sequence diary on a wall helps so young children can visually see the routine. Yes, I love pictures for young kids because some of them can't read or they don't read well enough, and so that but they can look at the pictures, and that's the great thing about a little flow chart too. Kari says, we set a rule for screen time at 8 a.m. on the weekend, but my 9-year-old begs and whines about it until 8 a.m. How do you handle that? Well, I guess I would say, like, if the rule is screen time begins at 8, but you're begging and whining, then for every incident of begging and whining, your screen time gets shorter. So if the agreement is 8, then the agreement's 8. The agreement isn't I'm going to whine so you can step it back to 7:30 or 7. And I think that's really important to lay out. No matter how much you whine, I'm not changing the 8 a.m. thing. So it's at 8 a.m. and that's what it is. If you come in my room at 7 and wake me because you want your screen time at 7, there will be a consequence for you, which is that the next day, you know, you will not earn your screen time. That or even that day, you won't earn it because we had an agreement that that was not what you were going to do. Again, it's very important to predict and plan and prepare for these battles rather than have to deal with them over and over again and be surprised each time they occur. I like the idea of no screens in the bedroom. Thank you. But could I enforce no iPad? But how could I enforce no iPad, but it's okay to read on a Kindle? It's still the same. As long as the Kindle isn't like a Kindle Fire, it's just a regular old a Paperwhite where they can read books. I think it's different. And one of the things that's good about Kindles for kids with ADHD or kids who have who are dyslexic or have trouble with reading is that you can increase the font and lessen the number of words that are on the page, and I found that to be really helpful and actually encourage kids to read. Terry says, make them do chores until screen time unless they want to stop complaining. That's hilarious. Michelle, I home educate my ADHD son, and also has ADSD. A lot of the time, he finds non-direct learning easier watching educational clips. I hate it's more screens, but it helps. I feel like I'm failing him. Okay, you're not failing him. First of all, home educating, you already get like a big star. That's huge and hard to do. I think the thing that you want to think about is, why is non-direct learning harder for him and is it balanced? Is there some non-direct learning and some direct learning? Then that's okay. If it's all one, all non-direct learning, then you may want to switch that. Courtney, I'm willing to negotiate ahead of time. Mom, I would like some extra screen time today. Can I do extra chores as a trade? But if you ask after the games are on because you don't want to get off, sorry, no deal. Bravo, Courtney. Love it. Um, how about programming it? This is a way to learn. Thank you, Michael. Useful skill. Yes. For kids who are so interested in screens, I love the idea about them learning a skill. Can they learn Adobe Photoshop? Can they learn, how to use QuickTime Player better? What would be helpful for them so they use their screen interest in something that actually is not just educational, but creative and perhaps productive. Um, Courtney says, kids who can't wake up on time demonstrate they had too much screen time the night before, so today we will have a screen break. That's also a great thing to say. Jennifer, my kid's on the spectrum. I have to follow the same schedule, but so hard when I'm taking 8 courses. Wow, that's a lot. Not to take the source of the highest hierarchy preference, electronics away, but to leverage in terms of desirable behavior. LOL, the development of dopamine culture. Parents need to be the frontal lobes, need the background noise to fall asleep. And this is related to the extinction behavior. It's not available when the condition response goes down. Ha ha, self talk. Yes. Okay. Yes, negotiate. What if the 7-year-old is homeschooled? Well, I'm not a homeschooling expert, but I do know from my what experience I have and have my understanding of child development and how ADHD and neurodiverse brains work is that if you're homeschooling your child, you need to have a routine, have clear expectations, downtime, activity time, screen time, just like kids who actually leave their homes and go to school. Okay. Yes, it is what else. Thank you so much. I've learned so much. My son has severe ADHD, getting into puberty and no guidance. He cannot take medication due to health issues. Oh, thank you. Your videos are so helpful to me. A big thank you from Belgium. Merci beaucoup. C'est très gentil. I hope you're from the French part. Otherwise, danke. Jackie, my 14-year-old is expected online 7 hours a day. Oh my God. Oh, hold on one second. My dramatic response, like knocked my ear off. Jackie, oi, oi, oi. With 2 to 3 hours daily for homework, very out of control, disrespectful, and no regard to their mental health. I completely agree. I think that is really unreasonable. And if you live in the United States, I would definitely take that up with the special ed department. And if you have and had not had success, I encourage you to get an advocate. That's just too much. Um, let's see. Courtney, I use paper coupons for privileges. Oh, I love that. I love you can make it a paper coupon that says, I did this, or I've earned this privilege. So if you want to do extra chores today, you can get money or coupons. Coupons are for extra 30 minutes on the weekends, bedtime, extra 15 or 30 minutes gaming, weekend gaming, sleepover in mom's room, extra 50 minutes of quiet reading at bed. Courtney, this is fantastic. And I assume you use you created these paper coupons based on what you know matters to your children. So Courtney is really demonstrating how to use incentives that matter. And this is a great thing that we could all learn from. Yay, Courtney. I turn off all apps at 8 a.m. except Audible to listen to audiobooks. Okay. Um, Plus, expected constantly to check portals, turn in homework by midnight. Schools have created serious problems. I completely agree. And I also think one of the challenges is that school is 24/7. So, you have to check your computer, assignments change, you have a deadline for midnight. If your homework's due at midnight, when is the kid with ADHD going to do the homework? 11, right? That's just over the top. Um, okay, great. Explain the bonus period. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to look at the grand amount of screen time. So let's say it's 3 hours. 1 hour is the automatic gimme. We don't negotiate that unless they're going to inappropriate sites, they're sexting, they're bullying, they're sneaking their devices at night. Then that means that the actual privilege of using screens at all is at risk. The other 2 hours, so they get that 1 hour. The other 2 hours, which is the golden carrot, and let me tell you, that's what kids want. They want that extra time, is what you have as your leverage for negotiation. This is how you can incentivize have tos, and then they can earn that want to. Great. My son is 8 and has a Yodo player that just plays audiobooks from cards you buy. Nice. Um, let's see. Kari, my 9-year-old has a limit and can get off sometimes without incident, but the time that he wants to do it could be right after school or later with friends when they have time. So we have a hard time creating a routine. Right. So this is one of the challenges with online socializing and gaming is that kids want to be available at all times for when other kids may or may not be may be available, excuse me. Because if your child is available from 3 to 4 in the afternoon, but that's not when other kids are there, they're going to want to be they want to leave it on just in case. So for younger kids, what I suggest is that you talk to the parents or communicate with some of the parents of your child's friends and set up a time. I did this with one of my clients, and the time was 5 to 6 is when they do their gaming, and that is his gimme time every day. And so that way he knows his friends will be available. You could do that where 3 days a week it's certain friends, and the other days it's somebody else. But then he doesn't have to worry about missing people or not being available. He's not living with FOMO. Well, yes, they will be up for a while, yes. Um, uh, Begging and winding means that you can't handle what you have given, and I just remove it from the possibilities. That works, actually. I have a family who basically went every other week screen free. There were no screens, just to kind of give a break, and because they could not deal with the whining. So when it was a screen free break, that was it. And I think the kids actually learned that they could do other things with their time. And so that made the time when they had screens and were getting off a little bit easier. Um, okay. We have a rule that no screens are in the bedroom. If you get caught with a screen in your bedroom, then you lose your screen time the next day. Okay, that's very clear. Linnell, they do it to wear you down. My son wants to wear me down because he got what he wanted by wearing me down. Well, that's actually true, Linnell. Like if kids learn, kids learn by experience. And if their experience is the more I pressure you and, whine and argue and push, eventually you'll give in, then that's what they're going to do. And so the challenge for you as a parent is to not cede to their outrageous behavior in those moments. Dana, I had to train myself not to run to the phone when I hear a text message or call come in. I say that phone does not rule me. They can wait or leave a message. Granted, if I know I'm expecting a text, have a kid who might be needing me or elderly parents, I'll look and answer it. Right. And those are exceptions that you can lay out in the beginning. Hey, you know what? Your grandmother's in the hospital. I'm leaving my phone on. Um, and I gave a special ringtone to that hospital so I know when they're going to call. Um, Jackie says no consequences seem to work. Takes it like his right rather than a privilege. So Jackie, what I would say is part of the problem is he's angry. I think he's probably angry at how much he has to be on screen for school, and he's just looking for some release. So that would be something to think about. Again, that idea that certain screens are for certain things. If you have more than one screen in your house, and how can you sort of juggle that? Michael finds it easier to read on a Kindle. Um, Courtney says that she uses this when kids rush through. You just remove the temptation. Jennifer says there's more risk for self-harm due to reduced executive functioning as opposed to neurotypical kids. Oops, 8 p.m. I thought that was what you meant. Um, Thank you, Jody. I appreciate that. Consistency. Terry says they're learning things by playing Minecraft, Animal Crossing, etc., because there's a lot of creativity and planning. Absolutely. We won't don't want to deprive our kids of all screens all the time. Again, it's part of a balanced diet that includes, hopefully in person very soon, hanging out with people, sports, board games, puzzles, drawing, playing an instrument, making jewelry. That it's part of a balanced diet. It's not the only food in town. It's like if you only ate Cheetos, which would be bad. Um, Kim says, I struggle with getting home from work later, and by the time I get home, my kids are on devices. I asked my husband to please get the kids to start the homework before I get home because my one daughter will bypass homework any chance she gets. When it comes time to getting her to do the homework, the meltdowns begin. Well, again, Kim, I think that would be worth sharing with your husband that the have to has to come before the want to. So if he's having them watch screens because it's easier for him and he can do whatever he wants, I understand that. But what I would then recommend is that family work time. Everybody's at the kitchen table, everybody's doing something on their computer or on their homework or whatever, so that actually when you come home, you don't have to take all this up. My son plays more than 3 hours, but not until he does all his schoolwork and chores, and he's a straight A student. High five. That's awesome. Okay. Do screens give people the ADHD brain fog after the dopamine has left the system? Well, the dopamine never leaves the system. It's just a crash, right? So what happens is, it's like, you're at this heightened level of activity, and then boom, you drop down, which is why we want to help kids transition to talk to themselves, to do a moderately engaging activity, maybe to leave their screen and shoot some hoops, bounce on a trampoline, you know, help cook dinner, something where they're engaged. Oh my goodness, it's time to stop. Thank you so much. I really appreciate everyone, and I actually want to save these comments. So I will make sure that I do. I just very grateful for your honesty and for um, showing up today. And I'm going to just wish you the best this weekend and to remember that not all screen time is equal and that you actually have more um, influence in this area than you may think. Work collaboratively with your kids to come up with a plan and refer back to that plan and have a non cooperation clause in this plan that you can